Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Short and sweet. Welcome back, everybody. Time again for another Word Balloon Live, the comic book conversation show, although we're going to talk about more than just comic books today. John Suttress here. I'm happy to welcome Marc Bernardin back to Word Balloon. Great to see you, Mark. How you been?
Good to see you too, John. Always a pleasure to be back. I'm good. I'm good. You know, I feel as if we are all the time when we say we're good is an outfaced bald lie. But all things being considered, I'm just fine, man. Just fine.
I understand, man. No, the world's still on fire. I mean, literally, the last time we talked, we were in the thick of things domestically, and now we are internationally, although we're also dealing with Supreme Court confirmation hearings and all the bullshit that comes with that. I mean, yeah. But we're here to talk about fun things.
Hey, that's what we do. Funny books.
Yes, funny books, and thank God, good science fiction television. Now, we are going to talk about Adora and the Distance, which came out last summer as a Comixology original, but now is finally in print, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. It dropped at the beginning of March into bookstores, and then the middle of March into comic shops.
Outstanding, man. Dark Horse?
Dark Horse.
Man, yeah. I'm on a Dark Horse kick. I had guys on yesterday that were doing a Knights kind of epic story, and Adora cool. and the Distance is kind of a fantasy quest.
Absolutely,
but a different flavor. I've got art ready to show as we discuss it. But give us the 10-cent tour on Adora.
Yeah, the 10-cent tour on Adora it's the story of this little girl who lives in like a 14th century port city in like Portugal or whatever, who's got these wicked dreams that are all portending the end of the world. That the distance is coming and the distance will tear everything apart. And the only way for her to stop it, to save everything she loves, is to go on a quest and meet the distance where it is. And so she's got to put together a band of knights, and she's got to, set out from the bosom of her homeworld, her homeland, and trek across a dangerous environment to finally meet her fate.
That's excellent, man. And your heroine, Adora, based on your daughter?
It's funny, sort of, kind of, and the idea for writing the book was very much inspired by the experience of raising her, specifically raising an autistic child. But, the look of Adora, the feel of her very much came from Ariella Cristantina, the artist on the book, who, she conjured like this little brown girl when it was nowhere written in the book as such. He's like, well, it's kind of based on your kid, so wouldn't it look like your kid? I'm like, that's a fair assumption, Ariella, and I'm not going to disabuse you of it. So go to town.
That's great, man. How old is your daughter?
Now she is 19. She's 19.
Wow.
But this book has been sort of living with me for the better part of 15 years or so. Like when she was first diagnosed on the spectrum, the idea of writing about it sort of came into my head without any specifics as to how. The only thing that I knew was I didn't want to write a memoir. I didn't want to write here's what it's like raising a kid on the spectrum, because of the two of us in this relationship, I'm the least interesting one. And so I then wanted to write a story about what I think is going on in her brain, based on nothing more than sort of the imagined flights of fantasy that your average kid, even your typical kid, would go on when they're raised on a steady diet of Dora the Explorer and Sesame Street and the Wiggles and Finding Nemo, adventure yarns, quest narratives. And so that took a time to coalesce, but this was at the end of the factory line.
Has that interest continued into her late teen years? I mean, is she one of us when it comes to the nerd stuff?
She's one of us in as much as, one of the interesting things about her is that time does not exist for her the way it exists for us. So it doesn't, every day is the same. Every day is a new day. There's no past, there's no future. It's all present. And so the same things that she loved when she was 6, she loves today. So she's never abandoned that appreciation and that desire to live in those worlds. much to my occasional consternation, having to watch episodes of The Wiggles that I thought I would never have to see again. But here we go. But, luckily I get Finding Nemo, which is one of the best kids movies ever made. And if I have to watch something for 400 times, I will gladly take a movie like Finding Nemo.
I sympathize. I'm only an Uncle Buck, not having children myself. And I do know that a lot of kids, obviously, they got their favorite things that they can watch over and over again.
Yeah,
and
never leave.
I sympathize as far as The Wiggles goes. So,
yeah. I mean, and hell, I am still also a dude who will watch Raiders of the Lost Ark every time it's on.
Was watching it Sunday, sir. I know exactly what you mean. And even sitting through commercials, tolerating it. Here's some of the great art in and this is obviously mid story here, but God, just gorgeous, man. And how did you guys hook up?
Ariella had been on my radar. Like I had seen some pinups by her. I'd seen some sequentials from her back when I was looking for an artist for the second cycle of Genius, a book that I did for Top Cow.
Yep.
The timing didn't work out. And, looking at her art, it's easy to tell why she would very quickly be snapped up by anybody, if not anybody who makes comics. And so that it just, we reached out, we made a connection, but it didn't work. And then when sort of Adora became reality, it was, who do you want to do this? It's like, wow, man, I think I'd love to see if Ariella's free. Because damn, like she's so good. She's so smart. She's so diligent about her choices, and her line is just extraordinary. And I remember very early on telling her that one of my inspirations for the book was the Baghdad issue of Sandman. I think it's called Ramadan. I think it's Sandman number 50, and the art was by Charles Vest. No, P. Craig Russell. My bad.
Okay.
And I was I wanted to feel like that. I wanted to feel like, a story that had been around for centuries that we just never found. I wanted to feel, as if it was just, myth come to life. She's like, okay, I got it. That's the brief. Let's go make this happen. And she delivered in spades.
Looking at her name, is she Greek or is she Russian?
She's Indonesian.
Indonesian. Wow.
She's from Jakarta.
Wow.
Yeah, but speaks perfect English. The only trick was just syncing the time zones of like the end of my day is the beginning of her day. And so by the time I would kind of wake up, there would be this overwhelming amount of information that she would, like, I found this stuff for research. This is all great. What do you think? And then I'd get back to her. It would just, everything would be on this sort of 12-hour delay where each of us would get a volume of data that we had to process. But it was dreamy because she really, really felt it. She knew how much it meant to me. And she sort of took that pressure and internalized it and processed it and made it work.
Now, Amazon Prime people can read the book now as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very confused by this, and I don't expect you to necessarily have the answer, because some of the Comixology original stuff isn't part of Prime. You need a separate thing to get it, and some you don't. And I know this one is I mean, at least I have basic Prime. I use it for Prime Video and 2-day shipping and everything, and I can read this for free. But
yeah, I don't know the inner workings and why one thing is and one thing isn't. I was just thrilled when Chip Mosier, who the editor who sort of brought me on board and said, hey, if you got a story you want to tell, we'd love to tell it. I trusted his wisdom and his desire to try and make it as accessible and available to as many people as possible. And if Prime was part of that matrix, then great, because that was always my intention, was like, I don't necessarily want to get rich off of this book, and nobody does get rich off of a book. No. But I just want people to read it. Like, I just want people to be able to get their hands on it. And if it's free for them, fantastic. At some point, I'll get them to pay for it, maybe. But, the first taste is free, as the old corner boy
mentality. Comeback. Absolutely, man. I get it. Absolutely. I assume this is California Sleepy was wondering if you and your daughter have walked into physical stores, comic shops, to share in the creation and existence of the story.
Not yet. I actually have not seen the book in the wild. Because it's been a somewhat mad couple of weeks. And I'd had some real desire to try and like go into stores last Wednesday when it first came out, but just couldn't break away. And so I think maybe this comic book day, maybe tomorrow, I'll sort of bomb into a few stores and like see if it's racked, yell at the owners if it isn't, sign some copies if I can, and then move on like a fairy just coming by to bless the random copies I see in the world.
What are your stores?
I am a big fan of Collector's Paradise in both North Hollywood and their Deep Valley store in Winnetka. Earth 2 on Ventura.
Jeff Johns' store, if he still owns it. I don't know if he
does. I'm not sure, but I came to it when it was Car D'Angelo solo, and then I remember he and Jeff partnered to open a second location. There's a store, I want to say it's in like Eagle Rock, that I want to go to called Revenge of. That and I want to do this because it's like comic book store meets pinball arcade.
Oh wow!
And I'm like, yeah, you're speaking to all of the things in my heart. It's an hour's drive, but there's a pinball arcade in there, so
that's outstanding.
Yeah, man. And then
we're about the same age. What was your arcade game of choice back in the day?
Back in the day, I would have played Contra for hours. I would have played Gauntlet. The sound of running out of health still haunts my dreams. And Warrior needs food badly. It's like, he's trying. I know he's trying.
You're killing me.
I was a Galaga fan. I was a Centipede fan.
Sure.
And
I was a Berserker guy, and that's why, like, for me, it's Intruder Alert.
Nice.
I mean, there just really is a charm of the 8-bit games. Paperboy. I loved Paperboy.
Tapper.
Loved Tapper. Tapper was fantastic. Sure.
Teaching kids to drink at a very young age. I
had to cross, do the the joysticks and everything because I think I needed to move with my right hand and pour with my left because it was easier just to pour, and they had it this way and everything. You were pouring like that or whatever. So
I remember my early Street Fighter days and early Mortal Kombat days. Being the sort of the southpaw crossing over because my left hand got faster on the buttons than my right hand. So it was like right hand's joystick, left hand. I got it. Okay, I got it.
Are you still a gamer? Do you still play modern games?
I am, man. I have become the kind of person who is very invested in story and campaigns as opposed to multiplayer because I realize that I do not have the time to keep up with 14-year-olds who have nothing better to do than play Call of Duty every day, all day.
Yes.
So that's not going to be my outlet for fun. So I end up just diving into these. Like, how long is this game going to take me? 100 hours. All right, I could play 45 minutes a night for a year and be happy about it.
If GameStop were smart, they'd have almost like an adult extension course on how to do modern. Because I got to be honest, man. I tried to play all the Batman Arkham City sort of games, and Batman's just like walking around in a circle. I can't do shit. I really can't. It's so embarrassing. And I did buy an Oculus for my birthday, and that's fun. And that's been reasonably manageable because it doesn't have as many buttons as your classic current remote.
The thing that the kids do that I've abandoned is I've frozen my social media acceptance at Instagram. I'm never going to be on Snapchat. I'm never going to be on TikTok. I'm never whatever's after that. It's not for me. I get it. You have your thing, but I have been able to continue the dexterity check. There's cool. 14 buttons on this fucking control, and I can make them all do things.
Yeah. I was telling you, my love for boxing on Oculus. The boxing games are fantastic.
Really,
and they really are like the Wii in terms of very simple, just throwing punches. And man, no, seriously, I can throw an overhand right that'll stump somebody on the Creed game, for example, or
a Creed game. See, now suddenly you've come up with a decent reason for me to get an Oculus, because one of my favorite games was Fight Night on EA's Fight Night, for that. I want to say it was like the PS3,
Sounds right.
maybe the PS4. And I love that game because the thing that I'm now, even then, but because I have so little free time, and even though I love a deep story game, I also really relish I can sit down for half an hour and get a complete experience of playing this game. And so sitting down with Fight Night and just playing around, it's like, all right, I'm doing a fight. How long is this fight? Like, as long as it takes me to knock this dude out, if we go the distance, whatever it is a 22-minute experience. And I can feel accomplished in it, and I did the thing, and I finished it, and I can then go to bed.
See, I abandoned gaming for the same reason in terms of it being such a time suck, because I was playing games on my PC like Wing Commander, and I loved Wing Commander. But all of a sudden, I'd look up and go, "Oh my god, I just spent 3 hours doing this shit." Like, that's not good. I don't have the time to waste for that stuff, and it's only gotten worse. And I can say honestly, with the Oculus, I could play it for a little bit, put it down, and move on other things, and I'm not bored. I bought it for my birthday back in December, so I've had it for about 4 months, and no, I still love it. But I can manage, and play when I want to, and then put it down and stuff. So no, that's a big innovation for myself as far as not being a slave to the games.
Yeah, it is. I'm pretty sure like a 40 years old and over consideration of how late am I going to be up playing this thing, because I don't get to start playing until like 10:30 at night, and if it's like 2 a.m., that's a problem.
Yeah, man. No, absolutely. Dante says, I'm a big fan of your podcast. I want to talk about your podcasting, obviously, Fat Man Beyond. And he's also been enjoying your various Marvel work recently. Looking forward to Adora. What projects would you like to work on in comics?
It's funny that my desire to like write Spider-Man or to write Batman or Superman or whatever is not overwhelmingly high. I've scratched a little bit of that itch in the past. Getting to write like Peter Parker, the Amazing Shutterbug was fun.
Yes.
So getting to write Spider-Man, getting to write Peter Parker was a hoot.
Yeah.
I've written a little bit. Like I wrote Nightcrawler once. I wrote Wolverine once. Getting to play with those toys for me has a very limited feeling of success and accomplishment. Like if you're going to be Dan Slott and write, freaking Spider-Man for 20 years, then like, yeah, like you can build that world. You can leave your mark. You can be that guy. But I don't think I have that in me per se. And so the things that end up coming my way in comics that I get interested in are the abilities to tell some of my own stories, or to tell stories like the Peter Parker thing, which was specifically like, do you want to do a what if story about Peter Parker?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. That for sure. Like I'm unburdened by continuity. I don't have to have read 70 years of these comics, and I can just distill what that character's about and then twist it. Like 100% glad to do that. So like I end up wanting to play in the margins of these sort of superhero universes more than I do in the spotlight. There was a story that Kevin and I wanted to do. It would have been our first comic book collaboration that we were obsessed with and we were completely invested in. And it was, we wanted to do the tragedy of Alfred Pennyworth. Because in our estimation, the reason why there's a Batman is because there's an Alfred.
Absolutely.
Because Alfred is the guy who, out of love and out of desperation, does not allow Bruce Wayne to get the care and treatment that a 9, 10, 11-year-old child of trauma should have gotten. Like Alfred put up a wall around that kid, and he's never healed right. He was broken and he didn't heal right. And so the idea of tracing sort of these three, epochs in Alfred and Bruce's lives, Crime Alley being the first one, and then the second story being the absence of Bruce as he's off in his 12-year mission to turn himself into a weapon of justice. And then the what it feels like for Alfred to be alone in that house without the child he was supposed to care for, who he cared for poorly. And then the Alfred who's got to send this guy out every night to punch crime in the face and then bandage him every morning when he comes back in, knowing that this is his fault, that there was a version of Bruce Wayne who was not this. And so the tragedy of Alfred is that he could have done more. He could have been a better father, but was ill-equipped at every stage to do it. And Kevin and I loved it. We're like, this will be great. We'll pitch it to DC. We'll see what they love. We'll see. Of course, they're going to want to do it because it's a fucking Kevin Smith Bat Family book,
Yeah,
and those
yeah.
things sell. And ultimately, the feedback, and I think we pitched this around when Gotham was still on the air, when the Pennyworth show had been announced but hadn't aired yet, and the feedback we got was, we don't think we can sell an Alfred book. And I was like, listen, guys, hey, this is your business, and I'm going to assume that you know how it works. But if you can't sell a Kevin Smith Bat Family book, then maybe you shouldn't be in the business of selling books because it's just a home run. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, like that's a book that sells.
I couldn't agree more. I thought when Tom King, killed Alfred, and they decided to make it stick, and the things that we've gotten since then, there has been a Pennyworth miniseries, as I'm sure you well know, that Alfred special where you had the whole Bat family kind of telling Alfred anecdotes and stuff. Now, Alfred's a rock, and I mean, I get it, and it is really interesting reading Batman stories where he doesn't have that rock to lean on, and it's interesting, but still, no, man, Alfred needs to be there, and the fact that he isn't, it really is a big hole in the Bat family, and there are tons of stories. I mean, God, even when we were kids, they played with in flashbacks Alfred as an MI6 agent and stuff like that. I mean, these aren't new ideas. Things in Pennyworth and Gotham and things like that. So no, I'm with you, and it would seem to me what you're describing would be a great Black Label story.
Yeah, that was always how we pitched it, and whether it needs to be in continuity or set outside, whatever that is, but it was, I guess you just don't want to make money, and I can't convince you to make money that you don't want. So if you change your minds, by all means, let us know. We can still do it. But it seems as if, at least to date, they've never come back around and expressed interest. So
now,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, all right, and I understand. By the way, I don't think we didn't talk on the air because it hadn't come out yet. But yeah, your Peter Parker's story for Heroes Reborn and making him Hyperion's pal in that Jimmy Olsen way. Fantastic. Great story, man. A lot of fun. And also, it's great now that I think both companies have non-continuity opportunities to tell these stories. I mean, really, God, that was the great thing about DC and Infinite Frontier. I just had Josh Williamson on a couple weeks ago and was saying the same thing when they introduced it. It's like, yeah, man, if you got a great Superboy, Chief Parker, Smallville story, who the fuck cares? Tell the goddamn story. I mean, you'll have us old farts being like, I want to read that story. That sounds interesting. Absolutely,
why not?
So,
yeah. And I do miss the days, and I'm glad to see that they're coming back, of comic books having the attitude of, yeah, why not? Let's give that a shot. Let's throw it up against the wall. If it sticks, it sticks. If it doesn't, hey, it was one issue of one book that that will be forgotten if it's not great.
That's right.
If it is great, we'll be glad we did it.
Absolutely. Now, Kevin Smith is doing, doesn't he have his own imprint now over at Dark Horse or whatever?
He does, yeah, Secret Stash Comics. And we've talked a little bit about, doing a thing, either, us doing it together or me doing, bringing an idea over to him.
Yeah.
And, similarly, it's like, yeah, I like doing comics when they're fun, and the wondrous latitude of my life as it exists is that I don't have to do them for money.
Right.
So if there's a fun thing to be done, then let's go do it. Like, if the timing works out, fantastic. I'm not going to say that I don't want that paycheck, but that's not the overriding decision whether to do it or not to do it. And so, yeah, like it seems like to be able to do something in Kevin's sort of universe, whether it's a View Askew thing or whether it's just something original that feels like it fits in that universe, seems like it'd be a hoot.
Okay. And you say, when comics were fun, some of your stuff's been pretty heavy. I mean, what was your Top Cow series, Mark? I'm forgetting.
Oh, Genius. Yeah. Genius.
Yes. Well, yes, of course, what you mentioned earlier and everything. Yes. You've done some tough stuff. And then I always tell you, first thing of yours that I became aware of back in the day was your Wildstorm Highwaymen book that I really enjoyed. And
Yeah, I mean, it ends up being like, what are the kinds of things that if I stumbled across them on like basic cable at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday that I would stop and watch, and it's like, yeah, I would 100% watch The Highwaymen if that was a movie, starring Denzel Washington and Pierce Brosnan that got made 10 years ago, and so I'm sitting like on my ass on the couch, in between obligations, like, hey, USA's got this, I'll watch that. Genius is like, yeah, I mean, it's somewhat uncompromising. This story of a 16-year-old military genius who secedes 3 or 4 square blocks from South Central and forms her own nation. Like, yeah, it gets harsh and it gets brutal. But I would also watch that if that was on FX, starring like a young Zoe Saldana. Like, done. Give that to me in my veins. And so it's less that I want the things to be sort of like frivolities, and just more that I want them to be pulpy. Like, pulp is the thing that I love the most.
Attaboy, absolutely. I'm so with you, Mark. You know that. I was definitely
all the TV that I've been lucky enough to watch, to get to write, the comic books that I've gotten to do, the stories that I like, they all have that same sensibility of like, we are burning through story. We are racing to the finale. And there's event, and it's all heightened, and it's juicy, and it's violent, and even Adora, like, people die in that character, and like, it's a YA in that book, and it's a YA book, but still, like, there's peril, and peril is important.
Agreed, and truly entertaining book, man. And I'm glad that it's on the stands now as well. So you've got your option, people, either reading it digitally or picking up. But yeah, let's get a few shekels for Mark and everything. Mentioning the Highwaymen, I gotta say, man, and I know he's canceled, but I'm still. I Spy to me was like one of the great '60s spy shows with Cosby and Robert Culp, and I got that vibe from the Highwaymen in a positive way. And also, am I wrong in thinking? Because man, it's been forever since I've seen it. And every now and then, I get the itch of maybe buying the DVD. You ever see? And I bet you have Hickey and Boggs, their movie that they made after I Spy.
I never did.
Okay,
I never did.
But you're hip to it. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to watch? And this is slightly off topic, but only because you brought up I Spy. But W. Kamau Bell had this amazing documentary on Showtime called "We Need to Talk About Cosby."
Yes, sir. I saw it.
And it's a remarkable piece of work, not the least of which because it does draw the parallels between here's the awful things that we came to learn about Bill Cosby, but at the same time, here are the contributions that he made to both society at large, to motion pictures and television, specifically to the creation of a job category of black stuntmen, which did not exist before Bill Cosby's like, I need a black person to be my stunt double because you were going to paint that white dude brown, and that was never going to work. So find me a person of color who can do this. And that started an entire sort of like there had been like Woody Strode, like
for real.
There had been like a handful of people who did that.
Strode, yeah, like literally you could count them on one hand, the significant black actors and stuff. Or man, just the tragedy of the Mantan Morelands that had to be Charlie Chan's chauffeur to get any screen time and everything. And it's like, this guy's a genius comedian,
Absolutely.
Wally Best. And I mean, yeah, man. No, I'm
So that the idea that, that at the time we wrote, The Highwaymen, that somebody like Bill Cosby in his dotage might have been able to play that, I would not have argued with you, 15 years ago. It's like, yeah, you know what? Maybe, sure. Today, needless to say, that won't happen. But I as a person of a certain age, we all have a certain affinity. And it's a thing you can't quite erase, is the anchor that Bill Cosby had left in our childhoods and our adolescence, which is what makes what he would eventually be revealed to be all the more troubling, in that it was there all along, right under our noses as we were loving this guy. And that's the awful tragedy of it.
God, and truly, I appreciated that Bell also put in what I thought was a really interesting conversation between Seinfeld and Stephen Colbert when Seinfeld was a guest. And Seinfeld is like, hey, man, Mount Rushmore, you got to put Cosby on there. And Colbert's like, I can't listen to the old stuff anymore because knowing all this stuff. And Seinfeld, and it's very Seinfeldian, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but he's like, you got to sometimes, essentially what he was saying, you got to separate the art from the artist. That is not easy to do given the heinous crimes that Cosby did. I can honestly say, as a lifelong Cosby fan, prior to the knowledge, that I saw him live 5 times, Mark, and I even saw his last tour at the Chicago Theater, that Hello Friend, and he had the sweater on the chair, and he was just sitting, just spinning stories. The Comedy Central special that he did right before the scandal and everything. I saw that tour, and my nephews. It was myself, my sister, and my 2 nephews, and they're like, it's like a badge of honor. It's like, we saw Cosby right before the fall, and I mean, they're not celebrating Cosby in any way, but they're just like, wow, there's a cool cultural moment that we were ringside for, and I'm like, yeah, and that is such a great documentary. I was going to bring it up, and I'm glad you did, because truly it gives me a moment to talk about it, because it's powerful, it's honest, it's warts and all, and the all includes, like you said, a lot of the positive stuff he did publicly.
Publicly, and whether or not, and it tries to investigate his psyche and his psychoses a little bit, but I think all parties concerned are like, listen, we can't pry into his brain and see what he's doing.
No.
But if you were to follow this pattern in other people, they are covering for this. They are doing, these good deeds as a way of balancing the moral scales, perhaps. Perhaps.
Yeah.
All of which is to say, if you haven't seen it, you should see it. If you had, and you should be able to get your hands on it at this point relatively easily. But it's for sure worth a watch.
Totally. Absolutely, man. Pretty amazing. Well, let's get back to what you're doing lately and stuff. And you mentioned all the different TV shows you've been doing in the last few years, but certainly right now we're in the midst of season 2 of Star Trek Picard. And as I told you off the air, it's a great relief that I can talk to a Star Trek writer and a current Star Trek writer and have positive things to say about the show, because I'm really enjoying it. It's so much happier than I think what season 1 was. And I know you weren't involved with season 1. And give me Terry's last name, the showrunner, because I want to say it properly.
Metalis.
It is Terry Metalis. Now, again, that sounds like a Greek guy to me, and I'm hoping it is.
He's a good Greek boy.
There you go. All right, excellent. We need more of those guys in TV. That's all right. Since the hole left by Telly Savalas and George, his brother. but no, I mean, it's and again, as someone that's part of the staff, it really does seem like, we're not only getting member berries, but it just really, this season feels more like Star Trek, frankly, than the last season did. The last season, I think they wanted to very specifically tell a different story. Again, as a Star Trek fan, I'm like, I wasn't crazy. I just felt it had too many holes in it. And right now, at least, it seemed like right off the bat with the first episode, it was, let's kind of clean up these characters a bit from where they were left in the previous year. Thoughts?
Yeah. And there's definitely a desire, because Terry loves Star Trek, like deeply loves Star Trek. As did everybody on the show. The trick of it is always that there is so much Star Trek that everybody's Star Trek could be a different Star Trek. Like you could be a TOS fan, you could be a TNG fan, you could be a DS9 fan, you could be a movies fan and never went back to all of those things are possible.
Sure.
And all of those things have, not to say different values, because the Star Trek values are always very specific, but you can value different parts of Trek. If you're a classic series guy, then you're like adventure. If you're a TNG fan, it's more cerebral. It's a little bit this. If you're a DS9 fan, we get to tell serial stories and we get to be deeper and murkier, and then if you're a Voyager fan or an Enterprise fan or whatever, there are different shades of the same species. And so being able to all get on the same page and figure out for us what made Star Trek exciting, what made it fun, what made it a show that we loved, and then try to infuse that into season 2 was the great work of the 6 months, I guess, I spent in that room. And then who do we imagine Jean-Luc Picard to be? and who would he be on the tail end of his adventures, and what is left for him to want, and what is left for him to need, because the thing that a person wants and the thing that they need are rarely in sync, because we sometimes don't have that, as Clarice Starling would say, the high powered perception we can turn on ourselves. And so figuring out what it was that Picard needed and the problems he needed to solve. And then, also I think that after the first season, even Patrick Stewart himself was like, I think that we had run so far from putting him on the bridge of a starship, for putting him in a uniform, from all those things, because I think that Patrick wanted very much to do something different in season 1. But after that, I think the conversations were more like, can we begin to sort of feather in those things that both the audience wants and ultimately he came to want, which is like, I want to see him on a starship. I want to see him giving orders. I want to see him taking command as opposed to being a passenger in the narrative. I think all of those things at the jump were things that were important to Terry and to Akiva Goldsman, important to Patrick, and subsequently important to all of us as we were trying to figure out what story we were going to put him through this year.
And also the choice to make these renegades part of Starfleet and make them, again. I mean, I liked Rios as badass renegade, but I really like him as a Starfleet captain. And again, he has that. They all had Raffi had it in her past as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so it makes sense, that they can slip back and do it. Whatever. I mean, again, it's a year and a half since season 1. I can't help it. The uber nerd in me is like, oh, that's pretty fast, man, for being outside of Starfleet. And all of a sudden, we're giving you a ship. But whatever, it's fine. It's fine. You got to get to the next chapter. I get it. And again, I'm entertained, and that's really the goal. Obviously, we want to know: are you part of the writing staff for season 3 as well, or was it just season 2?
It was just season 2.
Okay.
It was just season 2, and it was by no means a sort of acrimonious split. It was the way TV works by and large is it's a freelance lifestyle. It's a contract job, and so you contract for a certain amount of time, and I contracted for the second season, and then once that contract came up, there were other options in front of me that I had to choose from. One of them was potentially going forward on season 3, or doing a couple of the other things that some of them I can't talk about yet.
Okay.
That are still in the offing. Some of them were like, I get to write an episode of Masters of the Universe for Kevin. I get to write an episode of Critical Role for those guys over at Amazon.
Excellent.
I got to develop some stuff and get paid to do it, which is fun. It's like, hey, we got this novel we want you to adapt. Great, happy to do it. Like,
say it again. What was it that you were adapting? I apologize.
It was a novel called Foundry Side.
Okay.
That I was doing for. I mean, I suppose I can talk about this, given that it's not happening. But I was doing it for Legendary and for Peacock with the network.
Okay.
And I think it was, from all reports back to me, the decision to not go ahead and make the show was an economic one. We really like the script, we really like this project. It will be so fucking expensive to make this show, and we are, as Peacock, trying to figure out who we are and who we want to be and what our, where we're going to put our chips, because we're just trying to get into the streaming space big, and we're not entirely sure yet how to do that. But it wasn't going to be this, which is a very good novel that wasn't Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones that had some massive international appeal. So I spent I spent a year doing this, and it, to a certain degree, went up in smoke, except for the money that was in my bank account, which I was glad for. But no, my time in Starfleet was great. I learned a ton from everybody who was there. I got to fucking play with those toys that had been so seminal to me as a kid. It was a blast.
Will you get story credit on a specific episode?
It remains to be seen. I don't think so, unless somebody was very generous to me somewhere down the line. But yeah, more of my contributions ended up being shaping sort of the season story at large. And then by the time they got to drill down specifically into scripts, my tour of duty had come to an end.
Okay. I mean, obviously, with them traveling back to what will be our 2 year from now future of 2024, a couple things come to mind. Certainly, Star Trek 4, Voyage Home, when they're tooling around San Francisco and everything, but also that great 2-part DS9 things past. I want to say the Bell riots and Gabriel Bell and
Yeah,
the sanctuary set up in San Francisco, the homeless sanctuary and stuff. Will those elements? I mean, we saw a little bit of it. I mean, as we're speaking, episode 3 happened, and when they landed in LA, Raffi was kind of in a homeless area, and we're about to see what happens with Rios getting picked up by the police without any papers. Is he going to be in jail? Is he going to be sent to this sanctuary city? You know,
I'm not going to give anything away other than to say that I think that the timing doesn't quite work out for us to bump directly into the Bell riots.
Okay.
But there is a reason why, Star Trek was like, we don't talk much about the 20th century. Like this is a part of time that we do not love. And so to begin to set the stage for what would eventually happen in sort of Trek lore on Earth, and how, the Federation as we know it comes out the other side. I think that's a really fun opportunity that we were able to play with.
Fair enough. And did Delancey and Spiner have input at all with you writers in the way that obviously Patrick, being an executive producer, can sit in and make his point of view known. I don't know if with Q and Delancey and Spiner and this new ancestor of Data's playing any way where they are chipping in.
I think that their contributions were felt less in the room writing process and more in the we're on the stage trying to perform it process. Like when they first begin to read the scripts and have thoughts about their characters and who am I playing and what does this person want and so forth and so on, then all of that stuff gets, seasoning that gets added to the soup. But Patrick gets input from very early on of here's what the show is, here's what I'd like to do, here's what I'm responding to, here are threads that I want to, sort of pull out a little bit and make sure that they feel right. And he's invaluable that way because he understands that character better than almost anybody. And he's also got a vast wealth of knowledge from, let's say, 60 years, of being on stage and being a performer and understanding how, drama works from the inside. So any chance to sit down with Patrick Stewart and have him tell you stories about, here's how we did it on Dune. Like, tell me more about Dune, Patrick. Please. I would like to hear all of your stories about Dune.
See, I'd be like that, and also I Claudius. A lot of I Claudius talk, man. That's what I feel for as well. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll have a little more about Picard, and also want to talk about Fat Man Beyond, but also you kind of got into an area about streaming and stuff and the various streaming networks that I want to explore with you, given your role as a writer and also as an observer of what's going on these days. So we'll be right back, everybody.
You got it.
All right, we're back. Interesting. He says it's trying to move the commercials around, and I had no idea that we'd still be hanging out there at the beginning, kind of pull us out for a second. But we're back, and I want to know, as you mentioned, and Peacock figuring itself out. You've had shows and been involved with shows on. It seems like almost all the streamers. right now. I mean, I know obviously Amazon, and again, you had the development thing with Peacock.
Mm-hmm.
Picard, obviously,
Netflix.
Paramount. Have you done Netflix? Have you been involved with the Netflix show yet?
The Masters of the Universe
Of
was a
course,
Netflix
yes,
show.
Kevin show, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, and again, I mean, obviously, you're in the writers' room, and you're not necessarily on the uh area where you'd be talking and interfacing with the network itself. But do you have a sense of how the different streamers are operating? I'm really glad you mentioned, because I think it is fair for Peacock to say we're not sure where we are right now in the spectrum when it comes to live action TV. I remember when PlayStation was playing with
Mm-hmm.
doing live action storytelling, and ultimately decided, something, we're a gaming network. Never mind, we're not going to do
Yeah.
it.
Same
You
with
know,
Xbox. Like the Halo show that is about to premiere on Paramount Plus used to be for the Xbox, their network,
yep,
which never materialized, and it then became a movie, and then back to Showtime or Cinemax or whichever, and now it's on Paramount Plus. I think that there was a bit of a gold rush um, that took place kind of just before the pandemic, of everybody beginning to realize that we're probably going to need a streaming network, and like Disney Plus was beginning to heat up and just starting to do their thing. They announced some shows but hadn't had anything on the air yet, and Netflix was doing what Netflix does, and Amazon Prime was also there. But it turned into especially when the pandemic started and nobody could go to the movies, and television was in what is traditionally the sort of fallow period of, like, April, May, then summer, where there's not a ton of anything. And when the corporate bottom line could not be buoyed, especially like Warner Brothers or anybody, by theatrical releases, the only way to gauge a company's health was by their streaming numbers, by their subscriber base. And so that's when everybody began to just pour inordinate amount of resources into, how do we boost our subscriber base? How do we give them things that nobody else is giving them? Warner Brothers and HBO Max were like, every theatrical release is also going to be on HBO Max. Disney was like, have you heard of Hamilton? Here's your Hamilton. And also all of these Marvel shows. Netflix began just like buying as much as they could buy that was not already bound to some other giant corporate entity. Amazon was like, hey, we're going to have Lord of the Rings, you guys. It just turned into this arms race of what can we promise and what can we deliver to earn your $14.99 a month.
right.
And certain streamers have 100% just come out ahead for two reasons, which is, they have so much money it doesn't matter. Like Apple is like, yeah, we'll have a streaming service because why not? We'll still sell you phones. Like, this is not the way we're making money. This is like a decent add-on. If you've got an Apple product, we will deliver unto you Ted Lasso, which who knew that would be their gigantic like streaming hit, but was, which probably would not have been if it had not been launched during a pandemic. But that's a whole nother thing. Amazon could care less if you ever watch any of their shows, because you're still paying $100 a year for free shipping. So if you get some shows on the side, then great.
It's the best. It's the best deal of all the streamers, because it's kind of an
Yeah.
afterthought. And there's shows. I'm watching Upload second season, and Reacher was excellent, and
Yeah, The Boys is
are
fantastic.
fantastic. Yep.
But I think it's some of those other ones. It's the specifically like the Peacocks and the Paramount Pluses. Like Paramount Plus had or CBS All Access, excuse me, had Star Trek as their gigantic, like Star Trek and South Park and Survivor were their big levers of getting people in. And I'm not sure if it worked exactly as they wanted it to. Some of it because CBS All Access was a confusing name. And like, what am I getting with this? I'm not sure what this is. Paramount Plus. Oh, yeah, there you go. Now I kind of at least understand what this is supposed to be. But Peacock, what they had, or what they hoped they would have, was the Olympics, which got delayed a year because of a pandemic. And so they were kind of left a little bit holding the bag of, what are we going to be? What are we offering people? What's the reason to subscribe to us for stuff that you can't get anyplace else? And I think they're still trying to figure that out. Whereas everybody else has kind of figured that they just need to double down on, stuff that's in their library, titles that they have access to, or scale. Can you spend more than anybody else can spend on anything? And then just like edge your way into the marketplace with gigantic IP.
Yeah, you know what frustrates me, and again, this is me saying this is not Mark saying this. I don't know if he's got anything in the works with Peacock beyond the development thing that he tried to get going, but Peacock is Universal, and Universal's been around for more than 100 years as far as movies, and their lack of depth of library in Universal for their movie choices, especially the old stuff. I mean, I am as mentioning some of the actors that we were talking about earlier than Woody Strode, like Willie Best and Mantan Moreland and stuff. I love old movies. I love 30s movies, 40s movies. Universal has so many, and it almost seems like they cherry pick. And I'm sure that there's an expense to streaming that is likely involved with what movies they choose to show and not choose to show. But I don't know. I was really kind of hoping for kind of a Turner Classic Movies experience with Peacock, given the vast library that Universal represents.
Yeah, I think Warner Brothers has sort of found their way to doing a pretty good job with that stuff between the Turner Classic and the Criterion Collection, and so they get to go deeper. It's still selective. It's not like everything Warner Brothers ever done, because that does get expensive from the guilds need to pay, writers, directors, actors, their residuals, like all of those things carry financial costs. But even still, like there is a scholarship that sort of comes, at least I feel, with having access to all these titles, where I should be able to get a sense of the history of this medium through the stuff that you program on the air. That you put on your streamer, that I should have access to all the Universal monster movies,
right?
And if I don't on Peacock, then I don't understand what we're doing.
No, and even more so, not only Universal's films, but my God, 70 years of television too. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you think about it, and I mean, it's so thank God for the tapeworms of YouTube, because man, every now and then I am looking up like an obscure Universal 70s mystery movie of the week TV show, like here's one, man, the Snoop Sisters with Helen Hayes and Mildred Natwick as the two old lady crime solvers, man.
Oh my.
Yeah, indeed. Oh my, absolutely. They got like 4 or 5 of them up there, and I'm like, thank you.
Thank you. Scratching this itch that I had that I didn't know that I could get.
Or Jack Palance had like one season of and I think that might have been an MGM TV show, but it was called Kronk, and he's a police detective, nondescript police detective or whatever. It's like, all right, or even they got Dan August up there, the old Burt Reynolds show, but even another cop show that was kind of a failure for Burt before the movies really kicked in the 70s and stuff.
That's amazing.
So, it cracks me up, man. Honestly, I'm working on a Monkees audio documentary.
Oh, wow.
And thank you, man. Because honestly, I wanted. I mean, I love Word Balloon. I love what I do with Word Balloon. Trying to stretch, trying to branch out, try other different, podcasts here and there. And I found, oh God damn it, Bob Rafelson, before he got involved with the Monkees, he had one season where he did this college life show, and it was called Channing. And there are 2 episodes that are on YouTube, and one of them had Keir Dullea from 2001 and Joey Heatherton, and they're co-ed. Wow. And it's great because it is so pre-counterculture 60s, where Joey Heatherton should be wearing a poodle skirt with saddle shoes. I mean, it really is that Connie Francis teenage experience rather than what we got when the hippie movement and everything started happening in the mid-60s and the British invasion. But it is amazing. It's hilarious. It's fantastic. And Keir Dullea is this very prim and proper freshman that his mom is afraid is going to get involved with the wrong kind of guys. And one of the wrong kind of guys is played by Major West from Lost in Space, Mark Goddard.
Wow.
Seriously, man, it is so hilarious. All these different people that are on this show. But
you were on a lot in that time. You could be in almost any show. Like, hey,
absolutely,
come and be a bad guy. Come be a bad guy.
Yes, and again, it's like I had read about this show that Rafelson made before the monkeys, and I'm like, well, maybe it'll be on YouTube. There it is, boom, 2 episodes. So, and Shatner. By the way, we're talking on Shatner's birthday, 91 years old today. Happy birthday, Captain
Wow.
Kirk. So
Coming back from space, still kicking it.
what do you think of the new casting for new Kirk? I mean, obviously, all we've seen are stills. We don't know what he sounds like or how he acts yet, but
Yeah, I mean, I the thing that I found miraculous about Chris Pine as Captain Kirk was that he somehow conjured the attitude without it being an impression. Like he found the spirit of that character.
yes,
that felt along the same wavelength as Shatner. Like Shatner was doing 100% Shatner as Kirk, whereas Pine is like lower down on that spectrum, but it's still recognizable. I don't know what a third interpretation of Kirk looks like. And I'm curious because if he's just a guy, then I don't know the value of having just a guy Kirk there. It feels like you need to figure out the essence of James T. Kirk, and whether it's swagger, whether it's confidence, whether it's foolhardiness, whether it's even keel under pressure, whatever collection of those things and how you modulate each of those speeds will be how you find success or failure with your Captain Kirk.
The fear I have is that we're on these shows. In the case of Pike, there's a lot of unwritten stuff to explore, and I think that's great. Right. And I love the Pike novels. I love the Marvel comic that briefly ran. That was a Christopher Pike Enterprise, comic book. Mm-hmm. But in the case of Kirk, I got to be honest, just because of that, honestly, this is me saying this isn't Mark saying this, but I'm not crazy about the way they've rewritten Spock in Discovery and what we may get in Strange New Worlds. I don't think those things were necessary, and I think the character was fine. I don't mind looking at young Spock, but to imprint some current obstacles that other people may be feeling, this is the one thing about Discovery that bothers me is it really is trying very hard to put today's problems in Star Trek. And I realized that even in the 60s, we had great Let This Be Your Last Battlefield, dealt with civil rights or not civil rights, but certainly the black-white issue and the differences in people. And it always did. Private Little War was an allegory for Vietnam, but yeah, I don't know. I'll be honest. I'm worried that they're going to change Kirk to be something he never was, and I don't even know what that may or may not be, but it does concern me.
Yeah, I mean the trick of Star Trek is that it has always been a mirror. It's what science fiction, when it's good, always does, which is it's very much about the time that it's written. And so there are Bradbury stories, there are Asimov stories, there are, sort of classic hallowed, Star Trek, science fiction text that are very much about Stranger in a Strange Land. If it's about anything, it's about sort of, hippies and counterculture and immigration and the feeling of being other, all of those things, which was very much on people's minds in the 50s and the 60s. And so for Star Trek to be a mirror of its times feels like it's almost required of Star Trek to do so for it to be Star Trek. The challenge is when you're dealing with a character like Spock or like Kirk, it's how do you keep the essence of what that character was while still being that mirror of the contemporary, for a character that was created in the 60s, and was very 60s in his sort of mindset. The Kelvin, the J.J. Abrams version of it, still sort of keeps the, womanizer kind of by the seat of his pants, like just making it up as he goes.
Yep.
Like all of that is still there, but it's tempered a little bit. It's not nearly as swashbucklery as the classic Trek was. And so I don't know where on the continuum we go. It's a bit of, it's akin to how I felt about the Batman, which was,
tell me
how real do you actually want Batman to be? It seems as if the past 20 years has been an ongoing enterprise, pardon that pun, of making Batman real, of making him just a guy in a suit, and then what that looks like. And the Chris Nolan movies were very much about kind of just breaking him down to basics. The Batmobile is just a tank. Like his suit is just body armor. Like his helmet is made in China or whatever, and the batarangs are just shit that he put together in his garage. Like it's all like a guy could do this conceivably. The Zack Snyder Batman was a bit more comic booky. Was a bit more like, yeah, nobody's actually going to shoot this dude. Like he's never going to get caught with a straight bullet. You're probably not going to land a punch, but if you do, it'll just piss him off. He was a little bit more super than he was just a guy. And then you get the Pattinson Batman, and he's literally like not even that good at his job yet. Just driving a muscle car, just wearing like plated body armor. Okay. He like has a batarang that he just uses to slice things that he never throws. Like it is the end of that road of what if it was just a guy who had like a really good credit card and could go to Home Depot and buy shit to build in his garage. And personally, I don't necessarily find that much enjoyment in the what if he's just a guy, because then you start adding all these other weird things, which is like, if Batman's just a guy, why are these cops not arresting him? Like he's breaking the law and he just walks into rooms full of cops who let him hang out. Like he's
in the current movie. Is that the case?
In the current movie, and if you haven't seen it, but there's 3 separate scenes where Batman is just hanging out in rooms full of cops who like don't ever put him in cuffs.
I'm happy. All right. And I appreciate that bit of information. I haven't seen it yet, so that's really interesting.
Yeah. So I'm not going to spoil too much more than that. But I think that the end of that road is a road at which I'm not sure personally is a Batman that I get much pleasure from watching. Batman is always going to be grim, and it's always going to be like sort of emo, because he always is. Like that's that character. But then it's here's just like a rich white guy who beats up lots of people that the cops don't arrest for reasons. Like I don't get how this works. The more real you make it, the less successful I think it is.
What were your thoughts on Joker? Did you like Joker? And because I'll be honest, real fast, my thing was, I came out like, I don't know if I like this, but man, that movie sat in my head for like weeks afterwards. And now I respect it as, I mean, it really is kind of like, if, especially a current audience, if they never saw King of Comedy and Mean Streets, or rather Taxi Driver, you could be fooled into thinking, wow, this is a really original take, and not realize that Todd Phillips is doing kind of a riff on both of those while telling a Joker story.
Yeah, but I mean, I appreciated the craft of Joker. I think that Joaquin Phoenix was doing fantastic work. I just think conceptually, the less I know about the Joker, the better.
Sure.
And which is what I appreciated about the Heath Ledger version, which is he just appears fully formed and he causes chaos and then sweeps out of the story. Like it's like a storm front that just crashes into Gotham City, destroys a bunch of shit, and then vanishes. And like that's personally, he's scarier that way. I kind of don't like the idea of a Joker who's just one bad day away from like snapping. Like and so like it didn't quite give me what I felt like I wanted, because I don't think I wanted an origin story for that character.
I'm happy.
So yeah, like same with Batman. Like I appreciate the craft. Like Matt Reeves is a phenomenal director, and he's definitely going for a thing. Just personally, the thing that he was going for, which I think he achieved, was not entirely to my taste.
Okay, I intend to watch the Fat Man Beyond podcast where you guys tear it up when and either positively or negatively. But yeah, I'll see. Certainly, we'll see it first. Absolutely,
because we go deep.
Absolutely. Everything going great with the podcast? You guys doing all right?
Yeah, man. It remains one of the more fun things that I get to do on a weekly basis that require very little of me to do. And if possible, it requires even less of Kevin, who doesn't want to know any of the news stories before going in, doesn't want to know anything we're going to talk about. So, just want to be surprised. Let's just talk about it. We just did an episode last week where he was in New Jersey at his Smod Castle theater. and I was in Los Angeles at the Cantina. And so it was like a Zoom show where we had live audiences in both houses.
Oh, that's great.
So it was like a coast to coast,
Yeah.
which was a ton of fun. Like a vast technological achievement that hopefully looked seamless. That was as if we were just in the same place, and it was great.
That's great. That's cool. That's wonderful, man.
So it remains a joy and a delight, even when it isn't. I still have a great time doing it.
I'm glad that whenever your involvement started happened, and I again, I think you and I were already talking before you were doing Fat Man on Batman back in the day. But no, that's terrific. And seriously, man, no, we need good people. I mean, well, and of course you did your Galactica rewatch podcast as well.
Yeah, that was we started it before the pandemic, but throughout, I think it was like a year's worth of in the pandemic was doing that podcast. And, about a show that was very much about sort of the end of the world.
Right.
Specifically the episodes that even had fucking viral pandemics in them. It was both a frightening rewatch of a fantastic show, given new context by the world around us, and a sort of balm that I got to kind of swim in every week, where like I knew that I would get to talk to Trisha today, and it was always a joy, and it was always fun, and it was always illuminating. And when it ended, and I don't know if you've ever had this feeling. Most of the things that I work on don't end of their own accord. There's either, if it's a TV show, it got canceled, or I moved on my own. If it's a magazine, like I've been fired from magazines before, but I've never had the chance to start a thing and end a thing of our own determination. And there was a real sense of accomplishment and sadness once we got to the end of that. I think our last episode was we had Mary McDonnell on.
Oh, that's
the first time. And like there were legit tears because like I didn't know how to feel about the fact that we wouldn't be doing this anymore. And then to have President Roslin there at the same time was like, oh, God damn it, I'm just a mess now.
I understand. Now, did you guys during your run, did the announcement of the new reboot, was that happening when you guys were still doing it? And did you have a chance to talk to the creator that's behind it all and everything?
Yeah, like we never did it on mic. Trish and I talked about there being a new Battlestar, which is totally fine. We always had Ron Moore on sort of at the end of a season to talk about the season we just watched. So I don't think we talked about it with him on mic, but I did get a chance to sort of see how he felt about it. And he was very sanguine about it. He was like, listen, I rebooted an old show. Like the Battlestar that we are not talking about was a reboot of another show. And so for me to be like chafed about somebody coming in to reboot Battlestar again doesn't seem fair. I will say that they shouldn't touch my characters. Like I invented characters for the show that did not exist. It's like, so if you want to make your version of Adama, your version of Baltar, your version of Boomer, go for it. But like Roslyn is mine.
Right, and the chief, Aaron's character, and
like there's a lot of these characters. Like Caprica 6 is mine.
Right, yeah.
And so I would ask for them not to touch those things, but to like the idea of a robot revolution, and an apocalypse, it's evergreen. Go for it. Make something new. Which I thought was as fair a way to look at it as one could have.
Absolutely, man. No, and again, I mean, you root for reboots. I mean, but sometimes they're great, like Galactica. Sometimes they're not so great, like The Prisoner, one of my personal favorites of the original that poor Jim Caviezel and Ian McKellen did their best with, but it just wasn't there.
It just wasn't there. Some things are of their time. Some things, just what. Like I remember they keep talking about wanting to remake Face Off, and I was like, why? Why would you do that? The reason that movie works is execution, not conceptual. And so unless you're going to get Nick Cage and John Travolta back, unless you're going to get John Woo back, unless you're going to get that level of committed insanity, then you're just making another movie. And then what's the point?
and forgive me, Mark. Langley's saying that your Galactica pitch was interesting. And forgive me, did you mention that on the podcast? Did you have a pitch for if you were to ever reboot Galactica?
Yeah, like real quickly.
Please.
I had been invited to like, hey, do you want to pitch on BSG? And I said, well, let me talk to Ron because I won't do anything without his blessing.
Sure.
And I talked to him, and he also gave me that same proviso of
Certainly.
like, do what you're going to do, just leave me out of it. And so my take was, it had no humanoid Cylons at all. The idea became, we already live in a heavily roboticized environment. We already live in a world that we have ceded a lot of our control, a lot of our autonomy to the computers that are already in our daily lives. And so the idea of trying to find a thing that's scary is, what if the life you already know turns against you? And so the Cylon uprising was less, spaceships launching missiles, and less, robots marching down Main Street, and more, everything that we rely on our daily basis becoming evil, becoming, the enemy. And then what happens to humanity when we don't even know how to do the things we used to know how to do? Like I don't know anybody's phone number anymore. I don't know how to get anywhere anymore. I don't, all of my money is locked up in a bank that I use passwords to access. Like, we are 10 years away from robots doing surgery. Like all of these things are legit and real. And then if we lose control over those things, if we lose control over a drone fleet, what happens?
Sure.
So that was basically the take, was like, just the things that we have trusted our lives to have no longer have our best interest at heart, and what happens on the other side of that. And I'm still happy with it. I still think it was fun. They had different thoughts, and that is 100% the process of pitching on IP, which is, here's my take. Great. You don't like it so much. Okay. Thanks. Bye.
God, with a couple tweaks, that would be a great sci-fi story anyway. And of course, immediately, again, being an old man, comes to mind Colossus, the Forbid Project back in the day. I say, boy, this is Mark. This is why I like talking to you, man. Guys like we grew up on this stuff. We know these. What a great movie, man! What a great prescient movie. Eric Braeden in his pre-Young and the Restless days, man, he was like Heston, making a ton of sci-fi and monster movies, Planet of the Apes and all that stuff. I love Eric Braeden and Susan Clark as the female. Everything. Yeah, come on. But that's essentially supercomputer takes over the world.
And I'm here for
it. And we pay for it. Absolutely, man. Very cool. Crazy. You're killing me. Oh, God. Hey, we can wrap right now, bud. I seriously, thank you so much. It's always fun talking. And
it always is, man.
Well, I appreciate you feeling that way, man, because I know there's a lot of us out there podcasting, and I include you as part of the bunch. But, it means a lot that you come back. So Adora and the Distance, everybody. It's out now from Dark Horse. It is also a Comixology original, accessible through Amazon Prime. I can't recommend it enough. It's a really great story that will sweep you away. And given today's miseries, don't we need an adventure story that will sweep us away?
Amen, brother. Amen.
There you go. So thanks, man. Thanks for playing. And, you're always welcome back. So when you got something new to plug, or if I see something headline-wise, I'm going to bug you. You know that.
Send up a flare. I'll always come back, man. This is a blast.
Thanks a lot, man. Genuinely appreciate it. Marc Bernardin, everybody, thank you for watching. In just a couple hours, Roddy Barnes is going to join me to talk about Winning Time, the HBO LA Lakers series, and Philadelphia, as well, his fine comic, and a whole lot more. That's happening in about an hour and 15 minutes, so join us then. Until then, take care of everybody. Bye-bye.